Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about incredible pattern that is going to be shaping up across the United States. For the past few days, I've been kind of watching this closely, and it was already, there were some early signs of this pattern being pretty active. But the closer and closer we're getting to it, it seems like this thing is becoming turning into kind of a hyperactive pattern. A pattern that we don't really see on an even annual basis. Now, this is gonna have a characteristics of the La Nina, and I'll show you what I mean by that. The past 2 years have been La Nina, so we have had, many periods where we've had similar bursts of activity, in a similar sense to this one's, but this one is just gonna top all of the ones in the past years. I can't really think in the past 3 to 4 years something that really matches this period of potential activity that's gonna be oncoming. And yeah, it comes right after a period of very, very calm weather, so that's gonna be also another thing that adds to this. It's gonna be the contrast between, what we're going on, what we're seeing this week, what we have been seeing, and what we could be seeing into early November. So yeah, truly exciting, and I'll just want to talk about this because I don't want to keep talking and rambling about this without showing you guys. So let's start off. Again, I said that the pattern has been quiet. Now that's relative for the majority of the United States and southern Canada. You could see that the western United States, mainly the northwest and southwestern Canada, have been seeing storms and showers. And they will continue to see that, and it will continue to spread further and further inland now, because the storms that have been impacting the northwest for the past few days have been mainly breaking up across the mountains and not resulting in anything. Now, this first one that's moving in today and into tomorrow will be moving further into the country, but for the next few days still, the eastern United States, anywhere east of the Rockies, including southern Canada, will be rather calm and actually could get very nice and warm conditions because of the systems that are driving a lot of this warm air out ahead of themselves. So let's play this into motion. This is the GFS model. Notice there's our system. You can see could be dropping quite a bit of snow, even a few feet across the Sierra Nevada. So lakes like Lake Oroville will definitely be benefiting from that. They are pretty low, and that's the other thing that I'm really excited about with this pattern. If this pattern were to come true in the fashion that the models are showing, there could be some record-breaking amounts of snow for these areas. If you recall, we did have something similar last year around the early November or December timeframe, where the West just got slammed and hammered with these big systems, and then it was pretty much quiet for those areas for the rest of the season. It's going to be similar to that, but this one's going to be a lot more broad. It's going to be impacting the northwest, the southwest, the west. I mean, literally almost every state. So a lot more broad than last year, and it seems like the duration of this may be longer, especially since it's starting out a bit earlier than last year. So again, typically La Nina patterns don't bring storms as far south as some of these systems will be doing, so that's also interesting. Notice there we have that system, right? So it's quickly developing. By Wednesday into Tuesday, it's again passing through California into Nevada, dropping snow into Idaho, Washington, Oregon. Again, you can see that we have strong southwesterly winds coming off the Pacific, and that is pumping a lot of that warm air pretty far into the United States. So this is going to bring very warm temperatures. If I look at the temperature anomaly, which basically shows you where temperatures are above or below average based on the colors, you can see that across the central and northern United States, it's pretty ridiculous how warm some of these areas will be. And that will be as early as tomorrow already. Notice Wednesday, this continues to exaggerate those anomalies. That storm, you could see, is very slow moving. It drops a lot of snow into Alberta, Canada, right there, and you can see it's starting to spread into Saskatchewan, eventually into Manitoba. But notice it's very far to the north, this low pressure, so it doesn't have a direct access to the Gulf of Mexico moisture, so it fails to set up a cold front for now. And again, I'm going slower with this pattern because this is just one of many storms, but since this is closer in the future, I want to talk about this storm first. And I was considering at the beginning just talking about this storm, for the whole video, but I mean, honestly, I just can't. It wouldn't be fair to just show you the system and not show you the rest of the pattern, which again doesn't always happen with these models, or quite rarely shows something so spectacular as what the models are showing now. Notice that what we do see is another impulse of energy kind of I guess associated with this main system, divot and dive south into the you can see Nevada, Utah, Utah, so this brings additional snow again further south. Maybe areas closer to Lake Mead would be getting more rainfall and snowfall. Again, nothing too incredible in terms of rain for the lower elevations. It's going to be more of a snowmaker. You can see the Wasatch, the Grand Tetons, all across Wyoming into Colorado. The Colorado Rockies are going to pick up quite a bit of snow from this. Now notice again, as that other system at this point pulls away into central Canada, the flow of warm air is still there, and we could be again experiencing some ridiculously warm temperatures across these areas, potentially even some record-breaking temperatures for this time of the year. And notice on the flip side, we'll have very cool weather across the west. If you look at the 2-meter temperature shaded, we could have 60s and 70s all the way way north into the Canadian border. This may not look extreme, but for November, this is very, very, very warm. But honestly, it's not really going to be problematic. I'm sure many people will appreciate this warmth. I know I sure will. I don't see anything wrong with 60s and 70s. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about that, especially since it's probably not going to last. So that's another thing I want to say. While we are starting to get active towards the west, it will be still a bit more before this active pattern reaches a majority of the United States, which is really east of the Rockies. In terms of population-wise, you could confidently say that's the majority of the United States. Do note that this system, again, continues pumping up this warm air. It's further south, so it finally starts attracting some of that moisture from that Gulf of Mexico and the ocean. Sorry about that. So it does end up developing a cold front, right? There is some cool air behind this one, unlike the first one. And do note that at first, the cold front seems weak. It's pretty measly. And it is, but what we start seeing is an intensification of it and a stalling out of it. So you can see this original system pulls away. It has a pretty quick track from the southwest. Within a few days, it's all the way into southern Canada as well. But a lot of this energy stays. We do have another piece again moving into the northwest. At this point, you could safely assume that the northwest will be constantly seeing a flow of precipitation and storms. Some bigger than others, and you can see what we have is this powerful cold front left behind. And look at some of those colors. We could have some explosive storms, maybe some severe weather. Fall is the second severe weather season of the year. That's what they always say. So again, this upcoming weekend does look pretty interesting for these southern central plains. And if you recall, even a few days ago when I made that video, there were some signs of this, and it has most definitely been consistent. Notice this eventually does develop into its own storm system. It's slow moving at first, eventually does pick up some speed. And this is where we could see our first very large system across the central United States, potentially merging with cold air from the north and west with the system that comes in, and potentially developing some sort of a snowy scenario across the Minnesota, North Dakota area. You can see the GFS doesn't quite do that. It does develop a system, especially across southern Canada, that brings a lot of snow here, but it's just north of an area that is very heavily, a lot more populated than, say, Manitoba and western Ontario. But definitely you can see what I'm saying is that if this merges a bit further towards the south, we get this picture but further south. So that would be a lot more impactful. That definitely is a possibility, and even if it doesn't occur, that's nothing compared to what the next 150 hours of this pattern could bring. So I'm gonna go a bit quicker here, but notice now that the northern United States is seeing some of that cold air from the north and west spill in, so we don't have as warm temperatures across the whole plains like we will be seeing this week. So this is now next week Monday. Notice we have another system that kind of moves out of the Rockies. Again, constant flow into the Rockies, constant flow, especially across the northwest at first, but you'll see what happens later on. Notice that as we push this out, we see snow spilling out into the plains. Again, a pretty weak storm at first, but does gain a little bit of energy, develops a cold front, and spills out. And then right after that one, we have another system that moves in. You can see potentially also developing some snow across the plains of maybe Canada, the prairies of Canada, plains of the U.S. Notice we have some sort of a potential storm here also, maybe dragging a cold front along. And again, just very active. You can see storm after storm, little system after big system, and you can see some of them maybe getting some northeast influence right there. So at this point, I'm just kind of going over this quickly because the models disagree. This is still too far out. I'm just trying to show you the hyperness of this pattern. Now look at that. As far as you go, November 15th, we have a potential monster. Again, at this point, this is kind of ridiculous, showing you storms this far out. But the thing is that, they start showing this active pattern a lot earlier. I say anytime you get up to 240. That's not really La La Land. That's kind of medium range, and there is decent confidence at that point. Obviously, further out, less confidence, but most models are showing an active pattern, and I'll show you what the other ones show. But yeah, look at that, just storm after storm, and yeah, some of this cold air, obviously, if a system like that were to form, would be very impressive, and you'd see a stark contrast to to what we're seeing this week. I mean, if you were to take a look at these 2-meter temperature shaded, right? So the Fahrenheit reading, look at that. I mean, that's like December level temperatures, and if you compare that to what we could be seeing this week, right? It's obviously a stark contrast. Now, obviously, what I'm showing you is on the cold side, rather extreme, but so is the warmth. And honestly, La Niñas are years of extreme, so you can't discount that. So that's what the GFS shows. Obviously, the total accumulated precipitation would be very prolific across the west. I can't really show you it on this website because it hasn't rendered yet, but I can show you on Pivotal Weather the same model, the GFS, with its most latest model run, and I could show you the total accumulated precipitation. And let's take you out to our 384 total QPF, and you can see that the northwest gets absolutely slammed with all of this moisture. That is incredible. You can see it's very widespread, but the southwest is also seeing decent amounts, and maybe not all of the southwest, but Nevada, northern Utah, northern Colorado, seeing it. So it's not just limited to Idaho, Washington, Oregon, like in some La Nina patterns we've seen in the past. Notice across the east, further amounts of precip are also extensive. Let me go back now and show you on Tropical Tidbits the GFS model. But I want to show you a previous model run from Noon, just to show you that this isn't just one random model run, and the models have been rather consistent with this pattern for a few days now. Again, I won't be showing you a few days of model data because that will take too long, but I'll just show you at least a few runs from today. So do notice this is the GFS. Again, this first storm is pretty high confidence that it will be occurring again, moving in with precipitation across Nevada, Oregon, California. Obviously, for your official county and your city, go to your National Weather Service and see how this storm will impact you. You can see that it's going to be kind of into two waves. Again, the first one moving through into Tuesday and Wednesday, leaving into southern Canada by Thursday, late Wednesday, and then by Thursday and into Friday, we have that second wave further south across Utah, Colorado. And again, all throughout this time, there's warm air just being pumped vigorously into the United States, and that's going to be causing extremely warm temperatures across a lot of these areas, and potentially, again, setting up some nasty ingredients for severe weather. So notice that system moves through, that cold front stalls out, develops some pretty nasty colors, and again, maybe marries and couples itself with that cold air towards the north and west. We'll have to see whether or not that happens. The chances of that are kind of low, but you can see that it's definitely a possibility. Notice while that system pulls away, we have a pool of cool air that gets dragged to the south, so this sets up any other moisture to come in as a lot more snow dominant, and you can see there we go. We have a system that the GFS is showing at around November 8th, so 8 days out, not too far out, definitely not La La Land. Notice we also have some enhanced tropical activity potentially around Florida that could play into some of these cold fronts of these storms. Notice we have another system that moves in. This one also develops into a pretty nasty storm across the Midwest. The Northeast also gets quite a bit of rain, and then look, the West again, and yet another system across California, into Nevada, into Utah. I mean, that would be very impressive. So the models have been showing this extreme activity for a while now, and if I were to show you the total accumulated precipitation from this model, it's pretty ridiculous, especially across the West, and the total snowfall, yeah, you could count on that being off the charts for some of these areas. Look at that. Look at all those white colors, which is again off the charts. 48 inches is the max. And then you could see the Midwest starting to fill in with some of those colors, so obviously that would definitely be something that's possible. Today, the GFS in the morning, you could see obviously there's some differences. In the morning it showed more snow across the Northeast, more snow across the South, so it varies. They're all active patterns. It's not a single model run in the last several days really from the GFS shows a calm pattern in the long range. It's just obviously it's all over the place, but we'll have to wait and see how this exactly unfolds. And you can see the latest one only goes out to 78 hours, but even the next 78 hours, decent amounts of snow will be falling across the western United States. So that is a GFS. Let's take a look at a model like the Canadian. So again, let's start off with this Nunes model run. So this one only comes out 2 times a day as opposed to the GFS that comes out, well, 4 times a day. Notice again, pretty calm for into Tuesday, Wednesday across the majority of the U.S. Obviously, we have that storm moving in across the west. That's going to be delivering some good amounts of rain and snow for Northern California, Washington, especially the coast of Washington and Oregon. Then once it gets into Montana and Idaho, could deliver quite a bit of snow, especially into southwestern Alberta, or sorry, southeastern Alberta and into central portion of Saskatchewan. It pumps a lot of that warm air in. We see that southern part, the second part and more southern part of that storm develop on Thursday into Utah and Colorado and Wyoming. That does develop again that cold front that the Canadian also shows stalling out and developing potentially into some sort of a severe weather event across Oklahoma and Kansas on Saturday into Sunday. And then that system you can see potentially couples itself with that cold air. According to the Canadian, it does not. But look at all this activity that continues streaming into the western United States. Big storms, obviously, a lot of cold air would be available for them. And look, if you recall, the GFS at the November 8th timeframe showed a winter storm, so does the Canadian. So again, there's consistency across many different family models and obviously amongst themselves. So that is that. And it only goes out to 240, the Canadian, but yeah, obviously the pattern is rather active from that model as well. So again, GFS Canadian show an active pattern. European, this is probably one of the better models. More accurate ones. I would say though it's pretty equal to the GFS. Some people may not agree with that, but let's take a look at its midnight model run. So the second to newest one. I'll show you the newest one in just a second. But again, there's our system. Very, very high confidence. All the models are showing in a very similar fashion. We're delivering quite a bit of rain and precip for again California, Washington, Idaho, Montana. That first wave moves into southern Canada. You can see a bit better on this map because this takes us further up north. This viewing range, you can see what it's doing across southern Canada. Then we have that cold front that develops with that, again, that second part of it across Colorado, Wyoming. It stalls out, it strengthens. I mean, it has a lot of moisture to work with, and look at some of those colors. Definitely concerning from heavy rain, but mainly damaging winds, tornadoes, hail. And according to the European, yesterday at midnight, you could see it slowed the system down, developed it, and allowed it to mix more with that cold air, and you could see it developed it into a monster, fierce blizzard, right? So that's interesting how the Europeans showed that one more coupled with that cold air. But regardless of what happens there, it brings in that chilly air. GFS and Canadian, even though they don't show such a big system, they do show a reinvigoration of cold air, and that allows all the moisture that continues to stream in to act a lot more as, again, a snowy kind of pattern. And you can see that the European definitely keeps the pattern active into the long range as well, potentially developing another system. With the latest model run now, so this is then one from Mune. Let's see what it does with that system across the west, and whether or not it develops that blizzard across the central plains and that cold front that potentially could cause severe weather. There's our first part again. There's very little inconsistency here. The models are pretty firm on what they think this system will do. You can see a lot of snow across the northern Idaho, Montana area, the panhandle of Idaho, into southeastern Alberta and central Saskatchewan. That second part, again, into Utah, Wyoming, Colorado. It develops that cold front, shoots a lot of moisture there. The latest European model does this. You can see it does show a very nasty potential severe weather setup, a slow-moving storm, and it does end up developing it. And you can see it's further east though, so it's not as successful with that coupling, with that cold air. It does develop still into a nasty storm, and it does not really develop into a blizzard. However, again, very active pattern across the west continues. You can see we have a whole load of series of storms moving in while that system was, across the Midwest there. And yeah, that's just going to continue. And you can see the European now agreeing with the Canadian and GFS, showing something going around again, the November 8th, 9th time frame. You can see a pretty significant system developing. European keeps it a bit weaker, still pretty widespread, pretty broad, cold front. You have the snowy side to it. So that's definitely something to watch for. And you could see that the continued moisture flow off the northwest, inevitably means more storms. So I would say the Europeans actually been less consistent than the GFS and Canadian. GFS has consistently been showing this potential coupling not working out between these two, while the European does this flip-flop, right? So the current model run, the most up-to-date one, doesn't show this coupling. Yesterday at midnight, it showed that blizzard. Then I think the day before it also showed one, and then the day before that it didn't. So the European, while obviously it's a great model, sometimes, like in this case, I do believe the GFS has slightly better handle on this. But again, that's kind of minor details. Regarding the Ensemble, so these are many models, 50 I have lined up here that show us, I have here set up the European ones, the European Ensemble, because there's also a GFS one. and I clicked on a 15-day snowfall. So what the 50 models think, and you can see that there's not a single one that doesn't show quite a ridiculously active pattern. You know, they vary. You can see some show more snow across further south into the plains. Some keep it more towards the north, but concentrated. So the Dakota's getting slammed. Again, though, one thing that's rather consistent is the western United States, and especially kind of the northwest and the coastal areas getting a ton of precipitation. So yeah, you know, just a few days ago, this would probably been maybe shared by 60 to 70% of models. At this point, it's rather it's really hard to find a single model that doesn't show a really active pattern. Quite frankly, I don't know if there even is one among this ensemble that shows, you know, a weaker pattern. I guess you could argue this one is, but still, this one is hyperactive, but more across southern Canada. So, yeah, and this is just 15 days, so, you know, it takes us through the first half of November. You can expect that this will continue through at least into early December, as they're really, in terms of the large dynamics of the NAO and whatnot, there aren't going to be any abrupt changes, and this will continue as long as that jet stream is centered across southwestern Canada or the western United States, which it seems to be doing that. You can see, look at this one. This is a crazy scenario. I mean, that indicates a lot of cold air. I mean, you can see even the low line here is getting in on snow. That's a more ridiculous outcome, but yeah, it's definitely something that we haven't seen in a while in terms of, you know, the last few years. I would say GFS Ensemble, so this is another one, GFS 31. I could show you these all at once as opposed to the Europeans, which as you saw, I had to click through, but I can only show you certain regions with this. So let's just look at the West Coast, since that's the one that's probably the most impressive. It is very zoomed out though, if I take a look at the broad Northwest, but you can see on all of them we have the coast lit up with snow. It's I don't know, you probably won't be able to see this, but you see a lot of pinks and purples, so indicating a very active pattern. We could zoom in more. Let's see the Midwest. So this one you can probably see better the states here, Iowa, Nebraska. Again, it's just an area of the United States. It's not all of it, but you can see they all show quite a bit of activity. And again, it's tough to say whether or not the plains will even, you know, they probably won't even be the most active part of this. It seems to be the Northwest and the Southwestern United States. But again, I think everyone will get in on some of this action if this pattern turns out the way the models are showing, which at this point, nothing leads me to believe that, you know, they're kind of underplaying this or overplaying this. And do note that according to the GFS, that takes us out to 264 hours, so not even its maximum. You can see a lot of snowfall totals, almost very, very consistent with these models. So that is good news. We like consistency, gives us more confidence. But, you know, whether or not you like snow, I guess you could treat this as an amazing thing or a bad thing, but pattern looks active. There's just very few ways to not argue about that. So hope you guys enjoyed. It was a bit chaotic, but, you know, when it's just something so exciting like this, I talk fast, a lot of things to go over. You know, this is why I don't want to focus on just one storm system, because, yeah, this is impressive what's going on here. But you know, it's just one after the other. So where do I stop? I guess I'll just talk about the more broader range pattern. So, yeah, that's basically it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.